All right, so today I have Lady Nova, Supreme Matriarch of Project V, here to tell me a little bit about herself and about what Project V is and what it stands for and what the ultimate goal is. I've never done an interview before, so we're all gonna just kind of wing this. So, first of all, down to the hard questions. Who is Lady Nova?
Hello. So that is I. I am a vampire within the vampire community, and as you heard, I do found Project V. I also currently work on the many resources that we do develop. I would say I've been in the VC for roughly about 10 years. We founded Project V in 2022 and released it with to the public around 2024. So I would say that it's been a development as everything should be here. I think everyone's awakening can be, more basic, general within their own identity. Just some people get a little quirky with it and start running an entire community like I did.
Okay, so with that, would you say that Project V is primarily a an educational resource, a like a I don't know, like a support network, a support resource, rather than like a social club, a court, a hierarchy? You know how some of these groups, it's all about like titles and posturing.
Yes.
Is how would you describe Project V within that sort of milieu?
As I've described it before, I would say it's more so of a movement. We are more so about education and networking, but we're not just a community. We are a movement. We're trying to branch out, especially through social media, projecting all these educational content out there to combat misinformation. So I wouldn't say, there is like a true hierarchy within us. We're not built specifically like a house. We aren't having like a specific membership. We are more so very open networking community that brings education not only to the VC but outside of it.
Okay, so um, that's a pretty good with it. My experience with Project B, I think that's a pretty accurate way to describe it. It's a movement versus a any sort of hierarchical court type organization. Well, let's talk about you a little bit more. What was your first exposure to the vampire identity?
I would say, the more common form for a lot of quote unquote awakenings would be within the teen years or around puberty. For some, it's within that range. Sometimes it's in their late 20s. For me personally, I would say my call to an awakening was around my early teens, which, I mean, I kept having various symptoms that I had checked out by many health professionals. I mean, there was one night where I woke up and I was having fainting issues, and I was like, thought nothing of it. Wanted to go see a doctor for it. And I've seen many, many health professionals, and I've noticed the symptoms just kept getting worse and worse. And then eventually the cravings really just kind of started surfacing. And I thought, honestly, I felt crazy. I was thinking of many like different conclusions of like, oh, maybe I have diabetes or cancer. And I kept getting checked out for these things, and they were like, it's inconclusive. There's not anything exactly there. And I also was sitting there like psychologically like, I'm crazy. There's something wrong with me. Um so during my research, as I would say a lot of us have done, oh my, we're having all these weird cravings. Oh, we're craving blood. This is normal, we're trying to figure things out. I stumbled upon some interesting documentaries and talk shows mentioning the vampire community. So those documentaries did somewhat convince me, but I had my fair share of questions. Like, okay, what's up with the fangs? What's with the darker aesthetics? Is this role playing? I wasn't exactly sure how far this went. I wasn't exactly about to just accept it very easily. I figured, there's definitely some stuff here that I don't really associate with. I don't really agree with at the time. I was kind of unsure, I would say, about the VC. And I avoided it. I just rejected the notion of it. I was like, this is crazy. We're all crazy. And one day I just kind of got tired of it. I just tired feeling like crap all the time and having, weird symptoms and thoughts. And I eventually decided to step into the VC and meet people. And I would say the Black Books really was my moment of, oh my, oh my, because they had this specific like symptoms study that was there. And I was like, these are really like hitting the nail on the coffin, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that was my moment right there. That it was I would say I was rejecting it and fighting it for the longest time. I was questioning it. I wasn't really going to accept it. I mean, who would? Who would
Yeah.
just see the Vampire label being thrown around and be like, yes, that's me. You know what I mean?
That's actually a really good that's actually a really good way to put it, because I think that anybody coming toward this, they should probably try to remain as skeptical as possible. You know, because there is a tendency, especially nowadays, where identity is sort of like purchased. It's like something that
Mm-hmm.
you purchase wholesale to wear like a badge of honor. So that people are very willing to just jump into an identity sort of like all at once. And
Oh
I,
yeah.
especially when it comes to things that are sort of intertwined with your health, I do think that it's good to sort of a little bit skeptic, a lot cautious. I also did want to say that for anybody who doesn't know what the Black Books was, that was it was actually very popular. What would you say, 5, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
It's defunct now. But a lot of the resources have been preserved by some other people and re-uploaded. But it was probably one of the first attempts to sort of, I don't know, like sort of draw geographical lines to stuff, because there was like people had tried donor finders and like locators and stuff before, but the Black Books really did a better job at it than a lot of people have previously been able to do. I think I was in their Discord server for a while. I'm pretty sure I had an account on the website, but I wasn't super
Mhm.
involved with them. But yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, Black Books was a Vampire Community website of recent years, but it is defunct now. Um, so yeah, with that said, that was your first sort of foray into the Vampire Community. Sort of answers the next question I had for you of how you got involved with the Vampire Community. Is there anything that you would like to elaborate on as far as your first footsteps into the community and how that went?
Oh yes, I have many stories actually. Um, so especially back then, unlike nowadays, um, minors weren't exactly very accepted within these spaces. I mean, understandably, this is kind of like a very mature, kind form of discussion and experience. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have also said, they also awakened within their teen years, early. Some with symptoms, not so much. But for me personally, it's to this day, I see people that are like, oh, minors should not be within these spaces, yada yada, and understandable. Like I said, uh, this has caused me when I was like a lot younger to sneak into these spaces, these 18 plus spaces, just to get resources because it's one thing like Googling information, but there's so much misinformation out there, even spread by the VC,
Mm-hmm.
um there's media coverages, there are a lot of PR information out there, but it doesn't really get it into the details of like, well, what do we really think this is? Or, so I snuck into a lot of these spaces when I was younger just to, you know, get the resources that I really needed. And I didn't accept the vampire label. Even when I did join these spaces, it took me a while. I was kind of like, one foot in the door, one foot out kind of thing. Um, and my main motivation was to get involved into the VC was because I felt like the healthcare system kind of failed me. I mean, like years, even to this day, I've seen many medical professionals from different states and they still can't find anything. By the time I've had these symptoms, they would be gone by the time I got to the hospital, right? um so I wanted to find other ways that I could actually help my symptoms and do research into the blood consumption and such. I feel like a lot of people who join the VC, they do so because the healthcare failed them, or you know they feel like they need a community of like-minded individuals. And I was in the same boat there. I kind of felt a little bit lonely experiencing all of this, especially at a young age. I mean, kids are, they kind of need, you know, social interaction, especially, to talk about these kind of things.
Yeah, a lot of people awaken during adolescence, and that is not an easy time for anyone. And then when you add stuff like this on top of it, it adds a lot to everything that you're dealing with. So yeah, I can certainly agree with that. And I I'm almost certain that I was also sneaking into to 18 plus areas of websites when I was like 16 or whatever. I want to say that, so like legally, obviously everyone has to say you must be 18 or 21 or whatever to join this site because they're just trying to cover their butts. But I would
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet that if there was some sort of poll that we did, anybody that has any sort of awakening narrative, I would guarantee you that they did the exact same thing because that's just, even to this day, that's how the internet operates. Like, even though they have all of these
Oh, yeah.
age gates on things, kids are figuring out how to use video game character creators to bypass AI age verification stuff. Like, I feel like that's like sneaking into places you're not supposed to be is something like as old as like adolescence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say that's a pretty common thing. So, leading off of that, you get into the community. You're looking around just to get resources. So I know that me personally, and I've heard from other people, a lot of people are not necessarily satisfied with the resources that are publicly available. So did that have something to do with why you wanted to found Project V?
Yeah, that was also part of my frustrations. I mean, especially when I was younger, I was like, why isn't this more accessible? Why can't I just easily look some of this up? I think there's a lot of resources that were out there, but eventually, the VC kind of sucks at preserving all of these resources and, the history. It's very, especially, within the VC timeline that I created, a lot of the information that was talking about some of these organizations weren't even preserved by those organizations. It was preserved by like random individuals or people who, um, were just talking about these spaces and the resources they created. Granted, I mean, the Wayback Machine, there's a lot of information on there, but if you don't know anything about the community, people just kind of assume like, oh, this is all that there is. They don't know the terminologies that we use. I mean, I get a lot of people that come in and they still use, terminologies like, I don't know, they'll say supernatural, or they'll say what's another good example that they would use? Uh
Tantric is kind of a holdover
Tantric.
that people still use.
Yeah, and they'll just use very like outdated terms. I mean, especially with like elders. I mean, there's a lot of people that still use the elder term, but there's some people that like, especially for like LARPy purposes, I've noticed like they'll be like, oh, it just means I'm old and I'm within the community, but they don't realize, within those terms, there's a lot more kind of to that. So they got that from somewhere that's probably outdated, or, just word of mouth kind of thing. So I was frustrated with that kind of thing. And yeah, I would say that was a huge motivator for Project V, was to be able to create these educational resources, to actually outreach them, bring them out into social media. Social media is the best way to spread anything. especially nowadays. A lot of these bigger companies uses it as a marketing concept. I mean, just today, or I would say 3 days ago, Kit Kat was just using it as like a jokey joke. You know, they were like, "Oh, someone stole like 1 tons of Kit Kats," and they were like, I feel like they were serious at first, but at the end of the day, it was like a marketing scheme. Everyone started talking about Kit Kats. Everyone started buying Kit Kats after that. You know what I mean? And that was because of social media.
Yeah, something that I have discovered uh, with this whole like YouTube stuff is that you have to have eyes on you to get anywhere. If you want people to be interested, if you want to get your perspectives out, whatever you have to share, you have to get eyes on it. And certainly social media is the best way to do that. Um, I know that a lot of people had problems when the community at large sort of navigated off of forum frameworks and chat room frameworks and migrated to Facebook because of
Oh yeah.
privacy issues, which I can't say I blame them because traditionally the vampire community they took the whole discretion thing very seriously, and I guess we still do to an extent. Obviously, people like myself that are willing to put our faces on YouTube videos, maybe not so much, but discretion is still sort of valued. But how can you really be discreet when you have your community all over Facebook, which is arguably one of the largest risks to privacy in human history, or at least one of the initial largest risks to privacy in human
Yeah.
history? So I always found that to be kind of strange. I almost wonder how many people just completely disappeared from the community because they weren't willing to go along with that. But yeah, social media is definitely if the goal is outreach is to get the resources to as many people as possible. Yeah, social media is you almost have to do it. There's no other way these days. There just isn't.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say Project V got a little bit of a scuffle because, of that exact ideal, that very traditional ideal of like, oh, secrecy. I mean, in all of their, houses and their ethical or code of conduct, they had secrecy. There was always a form of secrecy. And that's part of the reason why a lot of the VC history isn't, it's very lost, is because they very valued secrecy. So, couldn't really have a paper trail kind of thing. Well, that was until people decided to go onto these Tyra Banks shows and,
Hmm.
night shows, or even like doing documentaries. It just like kind of exploded. So it's really at that point we're so out there that the government knows. I mean, they recognize some of these communities as an actual charity organization, or they
Oh
recognize them
yeah.
as an actual church. There's
Hmm.
even like in the state of Florida, a lot of studies are being done there, and the citizens aren't very happy because they're like, oh, tax money into vampires kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like we're so out there, it's not reversible. So, when I kind of explained that, I felt like a lot of the older folks within the community were like, that's fair.
Well, see,
They were kind of like did a little mini 360 on me for a second.
yeah, and my opinion on that is secrecy was for self-preservation, right?
Uh-huh.
And that implies that there was a danger. And I can certainly agree that coming out of the quote unquote satanic panic of the 70s,
Oh
80s,
yeah.
90s, yes, anybody involved in this sort of stuff, even just tangentially associated with the label of vampire, like you get connected to Satanism, to satanic ritual abuse, all of these other terrible things. And so yeah, it's definitely a self-preservation thing. But I think that
Oh yeah.
one good thing that's come out of social media is that one, it's easier to sort of get this sort of get out to people that, hey, like, it's not actually like that. Like, we're not like sacrificing animals, and like
Oh yeah.
it's not like that. Like, it's not like all of the every like sort of trope of a satanic ritual that you can imagine. Like, it's not actually like that, right? So
Like
that
there's ethics, there's laws.
yeah,
We're still human, we follow them.
yeah, so that's one good thing about it. But also too, I think that now, especially now within like the last 10 to 15 years, we've had an explosion of acceptance for alternative identities. So whether that be gender identity, sexual identity, alternative lifestyles, because of social media. Now, don't get me wrong, some of it's cringe. Actually, most of it's cringe. I covered the whole cringe thing in one of my previous videos about awakening narratives. But the thing is, like, there's not as much danger in identifying as a vampire, if that's what you choose to do. Not everybody chooses to do that. There's not as much danger in it necessarily now as there used to be. Now, I can definitely see that pendulum starting to swing the other way again. But
Yeah.
we also have to take into account, and I might be sort of letting people peek behind the curtain a little bit too much on this, but my own personal philosophy on that is you can ride the line between fiction and reality when it comes to this stuff, in that how much we know that role-playing games and fantasy and fiction has influenced the real community. Like, it's undeniable. Like how much stuff is borrowed from like Vampire the Masquerade, how much is
Oh yeah.
borrowed from other like fictional sources. Like, we know that the community itself, yes, there's a lot of serious things that happen in it, but we are not afraid to adopt these sort of concepts from fiction that happen to apply to our experience, and so it creates this sort of like blending of the lines of what's real and what's just people role playing, and who's having a laugh, and I think that in itself can be protective for people that are maybe. It's like, oh, I was on Twitter last night talking about how I'm a vampire, but today I want to be a werewolf. Like,
Yeah.
it's very easy to sort of play that stuff off as like, oh, I was just joking, guys. It's not that big of a deal. And that's kind of how I view it now, because like you said, the cat's out of the bag as far as social media goes. People did documentaries, and I know that was controversial at the time mostly because they just made us look like a sideshow, but also, like, I mean, it did kind of out the community, but there were no witch hunts. There were no the townspeople didn't come out with the pitchforks. They watched Tyra Banks and they were like, oh, that's weird. It was like watching Jerry Springer and watching people fight over which man was the baby daddy or whatever. Like, it was entertainment. No one took it seriously. It wasn't that big deal,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think social media is kind of the same way, where like it does give you the opportunity to outreach, but at the same time, like, even if we do have this sort of pendulum swing back against I don't know, against this all of these alternative communities, like, I still don't think it's going to be quite the existential threat that some people maybe think that it is, simply because people act a fool online all day long. And
Yeah.
whether it's people claiming to be vampires, or people claiming to be space aliens, or what, like, no, there's just so much of it that who cares, like. And I'm sorry, but most people have like real jobs and real concerns. They're not gonna like stop everything they're doing to go put on their Blade outfit and try to hunt down some people larping as vampires. Like, I just, maybe I'm being flippant about it, but I don't see it as big of a threat, especially now, as people maybe once did, as far as the discretion aspect.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I also think, especially with social media, the way the content is so short form. I think people's brains have just really like attuned to that. Like, it's kind of like everything's trendy. Trends now die within 3 hours, while back then trends used to last for like sometimes a whole month. And now everything is just kind of like old news. People get bored so fast. So I really feel like if people like really started seeing the VC out there, they'd be kind of like, yeah, okay, next, whatever is popular next, new
Yeah.
new clothing line, Lululemon. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, anybody that's interested, or that is sort of called, or perceives the beacon, whatever old terminology you want to use for it, anybody that sees a 30-second video about that and is genuinely like affected or interested, they're going to look further into it. Most people, like you're saying, they're going to
yeah,
swipe, and keep going. But even just having it out there, it's almost like a beacon in itself, but it's a digital beacon as opposed to a psychic beacon.
it
And
is.
the people that are the people that are in alignment with that sort of paradigm, they're going to find their way to it. But you have to put it out there in order for it to find people. And yeah, social media is definitely a double-edged sword in that respect. But like you're saying, the brain rot is real. The attention spans are short. The kids can't read, but they can navigate TikTok. So it's yeah, the people that are meant to find it are going to find it. Everybody else isn't going to take it seriously, and that's just fine.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So,
I think I would say it prevents the bad actors from coming in,
oh yeah,
especially with the attention span thing. A lot of bad actors are kind of like trolling nowadays on the internet, so it's kind of like, old news kind of
well,
thing, whatever.
and the thing is with that, people give themselves away too soon. Like to be a really effective troll in the old days, like you had even with places that were age gated, had verification processes, all this other stuff.
Mhm.
Like you had to do what was called trolling them softly. Like you had to build up to it. Nowadays, people don't have an attention span for that either because
Right?
they have jobs or they're just not that entertained. But like if you just give them 5 minutes, they'll tell on themselves, they'll out themselves very
Yeah.
quickly, and then you just move on. So it's
Oh yeah.
yeah, people. I don't know. I could go on and on for days about the lack of
Oh
attention
yeah,
span,
same.
but I do think that it has its own sort of protective aspect to it in regards to the people that the community is meant for will find the community. The people that it's not meant for aren't going to care, even if it is out there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So that said, what goals do you have for Project V? Like overall, like say we're 5 years in the future. What do you hope to accomplish? Like I know resources, outreach, but like kind of like where do you see Project V going as far as what goals you have planned?
So right now, how I view Project V, everything within it is a project. That's why it's called Project V. It's never ending. Never, never, never ending. It probably won't until honestly, when I, clock out for the last time, this community is going to be given to somebody else. And hopefully, this community will be forever. It'll be a forever place for everybody. But the main goal, I would say, is to be able to grow a huge community among like-minded individuals, but yet those who are so different from each other. I mean, we have sanguinarians, we have Psi, we have Eros, we even have like Therians in here. We have people that are 60. We have some people in here that are 17. The goal is to preserve that what we're building and to be able to outreach it, like what you said earlier with education and outreach. I eventually want to, of course, go into more in-person eventing. I've been looking into ways to connect, the VC back to being into in person again. I would say COVID really killed the in-person interaction. I mean, finding that digital beacon and going into these communities like Discord, that's one thing, and it feels great. It does. It feels great to find other people, but once you actually see them in person or even tell somebody about your identity is so much different. It feels so much better. And I really think the community could really benefit going back to being more in person. It's more personal. I mean, there's so much, nonsense on the internet right now, especially like every community has their dramas. I mean, vampires love their drama, let's say. But I think it would be a lot more wholesome in person. And I'm hoping that, down the line, we can actually create a lot of different, uh, what's the word I'm going for? More niche communities that are in like different regions that are like funded through Project V and it is being hosted by Project V within like their ambassadors. I think that would be really cool and kind of just go across the world kind of thing. Be able to go to Europe, be able to be in the US, be able to truly outreach in person. I mean, I think outreach is like one thing online. It's very easy. Just gotta know the algorithm and how people perceive information. But in person, I'd say it's more intimate.
Well,
being able to have that trust.
it's definitely more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
and
think we need that.
yeah, I think that especially post pandemic, a lot of people they're maybe afraid to be vulnerable again with other people in person. And I don't mean vulnerable in the sense of like, oh no, I'm going to get a virus, but like vulnerable in that like you have to look another person in the eye and speak to them
Mm-hmm.
as a human being and not just an image or text on a screen. And you made a really good observation about Project V in that there are people of all types of sub identities within Project V, and for the most part, we all get along really well. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
have medical sanguinarians, psychic vampires, Eros vampires, fiction kin, people of all of the above, and it actually works out really well. And I think that personally, that's something that you should be proud of because Project V is probably the only place that I'm aware of that's really been able to pull that off and still have the level of activity and discussion and respect that it does. Because if you look at some of these older organizations, I won't name any of them, but places that still have like Discord servers and things that are quote unquote active, they're not active at all. They have
Mhm.
spaces for Sangs and Sighs and Eros or whatever they might call it tantric still, but there's no activity there. Like
Yeah.
there may be
And if they
hundreds
do,
of
it's
members.
bad.
Yeah, there may be hundreds of members, but nobody says anything, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely do think that Project V's got something going for it in just the community aspect, in that it is actually a community.
Yeah. And I really want to emphasize that, this has been said for, I mean, going on 3 years almost, that like we're not just a community, it's a movement. Like I can't do all this on my own, like it takes the community to feed into that and to boost it and support it and actually make something beautiful together. I can't do that alone. I can lead it. I can, start discussions, I can work on materials, I can fund it. There's only so much I can do. I can pump out a lot of cool resources, but it will mean nothing at the end of the day if we don't have that spark of community. I've always talked about this spark, and I kind of just see it as, you know, all these identities and these people from different cultures and ages and, traditionalists, modernists, I saying, I see that as a way of like, if we come together, that spark really gets bigger. And I think that creates a beacon within itself. Like, this is a space that we can actually, challenge old narratives and actually function as a society, within a community, be actually, respectful. It's not that hard, just, if you don't have a similar experience to another person, don't talk them down, let them speak on it, learn something. I feel like people are just not open minded, especially like I get a lot of traditionalists that back then, when I first started Project V, they're like, it's not going to go anywhere. They were very negative towards me, saying that, they were just very negative, and I didn't listen. I had a goal and I was going to pursue it because I felt that this can work. I know it can work. And I would say with a lot of these traditionalists, they kind of like, they spectate, they,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yep.
older members of the VC, they really do spectate and they watch. And a lot of them I've noticed that go from like a negative opinion and are kind of like, you know what? Hell yeah. And
You can count me among that number because if you knew me 2 years ago, you know that I was a huge cynic, to the point where it wasn't productive in any way at all. And
mhm,
Project V has definitely turned me around for the better as far as how I view the community and how I see things going forward. And honestly, just as a person interacting with other people, like it's
mhm.
helped me tremendously, even offline, like which I think is ultimately the goal, right? Like you want to help people improve their lives, whether
Yeah.
You know, whether it's again, you talk about in person, you know, I think that would help a lot of people as far as being able to interact with, you know, be vulnerable with people again, because
Mm-hmm.
in this age where everybody's afraid to go viral for being cringe on TikTok, like no, it really is to a lot of people a huge risk to be genuine and vulnerable, because like, oh, you're being cringe, and or oh,
Yeah.
look at this loser over here. And I I think the only way to push back against that sort of thing that that is honestly stifling a lot of stuff is to just do it. And
Just do it.
yeah, I mean, like, I would probably feel differently if I was like 16 or 17 now
Oh
versus
yeah.
coming up on 40. But I said this a little bit in my awakening story video, but it's like I'm at a point in my life where like I don't care, like, and that's not to just be like try to posture, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
if you can't be open and honest and genuine with people, like we already have enough fake stuff in society. We already
Yeah.
the internet is entirely fake as far as everybody trying to put on an image to try to appear like richer, smarter, cooler, better looking
Mm-hmm.
than they actually are for the benefit of other people. And which isn't to say you shouldn't care about other people or what they think of you within reason, but like we've lost as a society, not just as a community, a vampire community, but as a society, we've lost that spark of genuineness, which keeps people from having genuine human connections. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I really like the idea of the spark that you're talking about, because you've definitely sparked it in me in, you know, definitely the last year that I've been interacting with Project V rather closely.
And I think there's a lot of genuine trauma within, society as a whole, but it leaks into the VC, and then the VC breeds that trauma and passes it among generations. And that's why I talked about challenging those narratives, really challenging, be empathetic, I mean, that's why I never shamed these traditionalists, when they were really coming at me sideways. I never did, because I understood what they were going through, and I can understand when some people join the VC and, they know they are a part of it somehow, but they kind of give pushback on it, be skeptical towards another identity, um there's a bunch of traumas within the VC, and I think being able to move past them and be more innovative, practice caution, but also being, progressive as a community, we can get farther and farther. And I think we've come a long way. I really do. I mean, we saw like interesting stuff happening with the science saying stuff again, and we were kind of like, no, no, we're gonna put it into that right now. We're actually gonna put out a public statement, actually do a discussion educating on it and why we shouldn't let these generational traumas continue to a point where we're, really holding grudges. I think grudges are so bad, and it really just stifles the community. And I think that's when people get scared about Project V. And I get it. I get it, because it's for people, they feel safer to be stagnant because that's what they're used to. But then they see something new like Project V, and they're like, oh, they're letting minors into their server. Oh, they're promoting on social media. Oh, they're collabing with this person. Now they're collabing with that person. They get scared, and they're worried about history repeating. But, that's why I think it's important to study the VC history, learn what is repeating, and kind of like do the opposite,
Break the
you know?
cycle. Yeah.
Break the cycle. And that's what we've been really working on for the past 2 years, is breaking that cycle. And I think we've been really successful. I think a lot of people have come around and realized, like, this isn't that bad, that they've stuck around, they spectated enough, and I encourage this. Come spectate us, come lurk. Let me show you what we can do, type of thing.
Yeah,
You won't
absolutely.
really know until you see it and experience it.
Yeah, and you touched on the whole Sai Sang thing and grudges, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, when you look back at it, uh, from kind of from the outside in, you realize that a lot of these grudges are not necessarily like ideological or related to feeding modality.
No.
They're personal grudges between
Yeah.
individuals, right? It's because somebody said something that somebody didn't like, and so these two people are now enemies. But it's just two people. It's not the entirety of this
Oh
group
yeah.
and this group. And I don't know. That was something that became particularly apparent to me after the discussion that was had with the whole Sai Seng thing flaring back up.
Hmm.
Is that like it's not actually a conflict between Sais and Sangs. It's a conflict between like individuals that hold bad blood still after
Hmm.
years and years. Which honestly, with the benefit of time, all of that stuff could probably be ironed out if anybody cared to do it. But there's no reason
Right.
it has to be brought forward to the future to people that are not those people that may not even necessarily interact with the community anymore anyway. So yeah,
Hmm.
I kind of agree with all that you've said. We don't have to repeat past mistakes, and I meant to mention it earlier, but I am really impressed with the timeline the community timeline that you have on the Project V website. That I could tell that there's a lot of work that went into that, and
Yeah.
I've never seen a timeline quite as comprehensive as that. And I've done a lot of reading, about stuff. Even if I wasn't there at the time, like I've read about it, and there were things on that timeline that I wasn't even aware of. So that
Yeah.
you did a very good job on that. I wanted to say,
Thank you. I created it in a way of like, here's the VC timeline. You got all these different dates and times and some controversies. I tried not to go too far into it, but some of that controversy really impacted the community and the way the path went with that. But I included links like, hey, you don't believe me that this happened or you want to do more research? Look into it. The link is right there, type of thing. And I've noticed a lot of past VC timelines, they'll describe some of the information in very depth, and that's great, but there's never sources on it. And I'm like, well, what if I want to learn more? Like, who was this person or who was that? And like, um, I kind of based the timeline on being able to fact check me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, the whole point of education is to be able to do actual research on it. I can't give everybody all the information. What I can do is point them to resources. You know what I mean? And I want people to fact check me too, man. Like, I don't want everyone to like immediately believe what I have to say. I mean, like, take it into consideration. Be open minded. Do some digging into it. I mean, there's some things that I've popped off about, and people are like, Nova, you're crazy. And I was like, well, look at this. And they look at it and they're like, huh, okay. That's interesting. I'll look into it more. And they come back later. They're like, oh yeah, okay. You knew what you were saying there. And I was like, see, and people learn differently. Some people just don't like having a straight conversation like this and me just blabbing off about random information. They don't take it in like that. And just being able to point at resources and let them go at their own pace, it really paced them, is just different. And I think that hits home for a lot of people. And that timeline for me personally working on it was, I mean, it was overwhelming. That was over 6 months worth of work right there. And just looking at it, if you scroll down through it, it's a lot. And I gave links because they could be able to fact check it and pause somewhere and be like, okay, I'll look at this, then we'll move to the next section.
yeah. I think you did a very good job on it, and and you're right. Like a lot of places will give like ask 10 different people that were involved in the community 15 years ago about a certain event, and they'll give you like 10 different versions of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you having actual like links and corroborating evidence, I think it helps change it from like a narrative to like an actual history.
Yeah.
And I think that's again very important so that we don't repeat the same mistakes that we have maybe had in the past and can, move forward to something that's a little more constructive as opposed to destructive, which was a lot of the community back in the old days was
Mhm.
tearing other people down instead of building, the whole thing up.
Oh yeah, and there's some people out there that still have that mindset. I mean, they kind of go back into their old ways if something happens to them. Could be something personal, or it could be just directly just VC drama. They'll go right back to that old mindset of like, oh, it's them versus us kind of thing, and it's so unproductive and exhausting.
Yep.
Like,
Guilty as
these.
charged. Yeah, but I am matured enough that I can recognize when it's happening, and I can usually stop myself before it gets out of hand.
Mhm. I just avoid it outright. I'm very I don't know how to explain it, very middleman, I guess. I keep, I don't like to pick sides, but I kind of like, be objective of to myself and what I need to do. And just staying in the middle pretty much has pretty much gotten me this far.
Well, I have referred to you as Vampire HR before, and I mean that in the best
Yes.
way possible. You do a very good job of managing conflict, even when you are not actually in the conflict. So you do a
Oh
very good
yeah.
job of that. Um,
It's to the point where people come to my DMs and are like, this person and this person from this community are causing this drama. And I'm like, what does this have to do with me? I have Project V. This is not Project V specific. Like, I don't understand why we are talking about this. Like I said, drama. Vampires
well,
love their drama.
but that should be an indicator to you about how, I guess, how you are positioned now within the greater leadership hierarchy of the community, that people are coming to you to ask about stuff that doesn't even happen in your community. Dare I say, you may be approaching something of an elder status yourself.
Oh boy. Yeah. I will not be taking that label. That's for everyone else. Some people like the label. I'm just a person that makes resources, drink way too much caffeine, and rant about the VC.
Well, on that note, is there anything else that you would like to say? Is there anything else that you want to get out there? We've been talking for quite a while now,
Oh
so
yeah.
I'm gonna open it to you and let you just kind of say whatever you want for the next few minutes, and then we'll move on with our lives, making the VC a better place.
Hell yeah. So, I would say back to what I was saying about the whole ethics, the PR statements, especially with like online, like, concerns with people possibly coming in and are like, oh, well, you're just a bunch of monsters or you're a bunch of crazy people and you do this and that. Like, no. The vast majority of the VC, they do follow ethics. And of course the country laws, that's definitely needs to be put into perspective. I mean, it's don't get me wrong, every community has those bad apples, but like the majority of the VC, they have really good ethics. I mean, there's the Donor Bill of Rights, which is personally my favorite. The more common, popular ones is the Black Veil. I mean, there's different ethics that we follow, and even each community has their own code of conduct that isn't necessarily ethics that the whole community follows. It's just how that uh, community or that space standardize themselves. Um, but pretty much, I mean, if anyone's interested in looking into the VC, I would invite you to come explore, come check out Project V, look at our resources. I promise we don't bite. Well, not too hard, I would say, but we don't bite. Um, we're always pumping out, fun discussions. We have vamp discussions, which are voice chats. We're looking, we've been working on transcribing them. So if you miss them, hey, there's a document you can look at. We do VC roundtables where it's like a text based discussion where we just talk about, a bunch of stuff. We do movie nights. I mean, we're working on a book club and we have different resources that are coming out. We have a really big project that's actually dropping in 7 days. It's really going to be changing the way you will receive your education within the VC. Education will be a little bit more back to school, I should say. We have that coming out in 7 days. We also have a surprise that is launching. Um, let's say we collaborated with a company, um, and you will be able to get some pretty cool modifications out of it. So it's gonna get a little bit chaos there. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming out. Come check us out. I mean, I hang around there. You'll see me talking in our voice discussions or blabbing off and off topic. But yeah, we have a fun community. We have various social medias you can check us out on. We we really do like to keep things pretty tame around here and just fun. I think a lot of these communities forget that we're all just goofy. You know, we all have our own personalities. We don't need to be so serious. You know, I think keeping it lighthearted is fun. So if you're looking into that kind of thing, we have a link. I'm sure this will give us a link somewhere in the description. But yeah, I would say this interview has been very nice.
Yeah, yeah, and I will link I'll link the Project V website. If you're comfortable, I can do the Discord link too, or if that's
Oh, that's fine.
I think that might actually even be on the website.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, links will be in the description for all of this stuff. Um, yeah, thank you for taking this much time to talk with me and to talk about Project V. You were mentioning 7 days. By the time this video goes up, those things may actually already be available, but uh,
Ooh.
you know, yeah, it does take a little bit of time to edit this stuff, so it's possible by the time that you're watching this video that these things that she has teased at may actually already be ready to go. So do check out the website in the description. Check out the Discord server. We're all pretty nice, even though we like to be a little edgy sometimes with our aesthetics, but we're not. We're nice people. And yeah, so thank you, Lady Nova, for taking the time to be here, and everybody watching. Thank you for taking the time to watch and or listen to this. I appreciate it, and we will see you guys next time.